In the wild lands, where souls are claimed and hearts are marked by force, a new legend is about to be told. Before we dive into this darkness, I ask for your tribute. If you yearn for love born from pain, show your strength with a like. Join our pack by subscribing so you won't miss the secrets the night whispers. Now, prepare yourselves. The throne room smelled of old blood and silver. Lyra's knees burned against the black stone floor, the cold seeping through the thin fabric of her dress, the only thing they'd left her after the fall. Around her, wolves in human skin watched with eyes that glowed like molten metal in the torchlight. Warriors, killers, every single one of them marked by scars that spoke of survival. She kept her head down, not from submission, but strategy. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives are only the universe preparing us for who we must become. The words her mother had whispered before the revolt felt like a curse now. Her mother was dead, her pack was ash, and Lyra was here, in the night realm, sold like livestock to a king who supposedly never let his enemies live past dawn. Raise your face. The command came from above, a voice that wasn't loud but somehow filled every corner of the massive hall, deep, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't need to be repeated. Lyra's jaw clenched. She'd learned young that defiance without power was just another word for suicide, but she'd also learned that wolves respected one thing above all else, the refusal to cower. She lifted her chin. The world stopped. Alpha King Ronan Vex stood before his throne, a grotesque construction of ancient bones and lunar silver that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. He was tall, broader than any male she'd ever seen, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and a face carved from violence and restraint. His eyes were wolf gold, predator bright, and they locked onto hers with an intensity that stole the air from her lungs. Something shifted in the silence. Not sound, she would never hear the echo, the telepathic bond that connected every shifter to their pack. That gift had been taken from her at birth, leaving her deaf in a world of mental voices. But this was different. Her heart slammed against her ribs, once, twice, and on the third beat she felt it, an answering pulse that didn't belong to her. A rhythm that came from him. Ronan's pupils dilated, his fingers curled into fists at his sides, and for a fraction of a second, something feral and desperate flickered across his face before he crushed it beneath an expression of absolute ice. Stand. She rose on trembling legs she refused to acknowledge. Around them, the court had gone silent in a way that felt wrong, expectant, like they were waiting for an explosion. A man stepped forward from the shadows to Ronan's left, tall, with silver streaking through dark hair and a scar that cut from temple to jaw. His uniform marked him as high-ranking, general maybe. His smile was all teeth and no warmth. My king, the tribute from the Veil Pack, last of her line, as requested by the treaty. His voice carried satisfaction that made Lyra's stomach turn. She's intact, mostly. Leave us. The general, Kaelan, she remembered from the whispered warnings during transport, hesitated. Your Majesty, protocol dictates. I said leave. Each word was precise, sharp enough to draw blood. All of you. The court moved as one, a wave of bodies flowing toward the massive doors. Kaelan lingered, his gaze sliding between Lyra and the king with something that looked like calculation before he finally bowed and retreated. The doors slammed shut with a sound like a death knell. Lyra was alone with the Alpha King. Ronan descended the steps slowly, each footfall deliberate. He moved like violence contained in skin, every muscle coiled with the promise of devastation. When he stopped 3 feet from her, she had to tilt her head back to hold his stare. Up close, he was even more terrifying and more beautiful. The kind of beauty that legends warned about, angels before the fall, demons before the revelation. "You're silent," he said, and there was something strange in his tone, not accusatory, almost awed. No echo, no presence in the pack mind. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "I was born without it." "Impossible! Every wolf carries the echo. It's what makes us pack." "Then I'm not pack." The words came out harder than intended, sharp with years of being called broken, defective, wrong. "I'm just the last body you could trade for peace." His jaw flexed. For a moment, she thought he might strike her. She'd been hit for less. Instead, he stepped closer, so close she could feel the heat radiating from him, could smell cedar and smoke, and something wild that made her pulse race. "Look at me." She was already looking, couldn't seem to stop. His hand rose slowly, giving her time to flinch away. She didn't, couldn't. When his fingers touched her chin, rough calluses against her skin, electricity shot down her spine. Her breath caught. His eyes widened fractionally, and she knew he felt it too, that impossible connection that shouldn't exist without the echo. "What are you?" The question was barely a whisper, and beneath the suspicion, she heard something else. Fear. The Alpha King was afraid of her. "I don't know." Truth, simple and cutting. "But I'm not your enemy." No. His thumb traced her chin line once, feather light, and her entire body went taut. She dropped his hand and stepped back, and the loss of contact felt like cold water. When he spoke again, his voice had returned to that controlled, distant tone that matched the ice in his eyes. "You'll be kept in the lower chambers, fed, clothed. Guards will be posted, but you're not to be harmed." He turned away, dismissing her. "Why?" The word escaped before she could stop it. "You don't know me, don't know what I'm capable of. For all you know, I'm exactly what they sent me here to be, a weapon wrapped in surrender." Ronan glanced back over his shoulder, and the look he gave her was so raw, so stripped of pretense, that it felt like standing naked in a storm. "Because if anyone lays a hand on you, I'll tear them apart with my teeth, and I have no idea why." He called for the guards. 2 massive males entered, keeping their eyes carefully averted from her as they gestured toward a side corridor. Lyra followed, her mind spinning, her skin still burning where he touched her. At the doorway, she looked back. Ronan stood at the base of his throne, hands braced against the bone armrests, head bowed like a man in prayer or defeat. Even from this distance, she could feel it, that strange, impossible pulse that beat in time with her own heart. The door closed between them. In the darkness of the descending stairwell, Lyra pressed her palm against her chest and felt the double rhythm beneath her ribs. Whatever had just happened in that throne room, it wasn't protection. It was a death sentence for them both. The cell wasn't what she expected. No bars, no shackles hanging from stone walls, just a room carved from black rock, furnished with a bed that looked softer than anything she'd slept on in months, a wooden table, and a single narrow window set too high to reach. Moonlight filtered through, painting silver stripes across the floor. A gilded cage was still a cage. The guards had left without a word, the heavy door closing with a finality that echoed in her bones. Lyra stood in the center of the room, arms wrapped around herself, trying to stop the shaking that had nothing to do with cold. Her skin still burned where he'd touched her. She'd been around alphas before. Her father had been one before the revolt. She knew the weight of their presence, the way dominance rolled off them like heat shimmer. But Ronan was something else entirely, something that made her wolf, the beast she'd never been able to shift into, never been able to hear, stir in the hollow space behind her ribs. Impossible. She didn't have a wolf. The healers had confirmed it when she was 5. when every other child her age had begun their first shifts. Empty, broken, silent. So why did his touch feel like waking something that had been sleeping her entire life? Lyra moved to the window, dragging the table beneath it and climbing up. Through the narrow opening, she could see the night realms spread below, a kingdom of sharp peaks and dense forests, all of it bathed in moonlight that seemed brighter here than anywhere else. In the distance, she could make out other structures, barracks maybe, training grounds. This was a kingdom built for war. Her stomach growled, sharp and painful. They'd fed her once during the 3-day journey, stale bread and water that tasted like rust. She'd learned not to complain, learned that silence kept you breathing longer than protest ever did. The sound of the door opening made her spin, nearly losing her balance on the table. A young woman entered carrying a tray, her movements careful and measured. She was small, with auburn hair braided down her back and eyes that darted nervously between Lyra and the doorway. Behind her, a guard stood watch, his hand resting on the sword at his hip. "Food," the woman said quietly, setting the tray on the bed. Lyra climbed down slowly, every instinct screaming trap. But the smell of fresh bread and roasted meat made her mouth water, made the hunger claw at her insides with renewed viciousness. "Thank you," she managed. The woman's eyes widened slightly, like gratitude was the last thing she'd expected. She nodded once and turned to leave, but Lyra's voice stopped her. "Wait, what's your name?" A pause. "Mira. I work in the kitchens." Mira, Lyra tested the name, tried to make it feel like the beginning of something other than isolation. "Can I ask you something?" The guard shifted, a low, warning growl rumbling from his chest. Mira glanced back at him, then at Lyra, conflict playing across her features. "You shouldn't," she whispered. "The king's orders were clear. Food, clothing, safety, nothing else." "Why?" The question burned. Why would he protect someone sent here as tribute? Mira's expression shifted into something that looked almost like pity. "Because you're the first person in 3 years to look him in the eye without flinching, and because—" She stopped, shook her head. "I've said too much." She fled before Lyra could respond, the guard slamming the door behind them. The lock clicked into place with brutal finality. Alone again. Lyra stared at the tray. Every survival instinct told her not to trust it, that poison would be the easiest way to eliminate a problem without breaking the fragile treaty. But hunger was its own kind of death, slower and more certain. She ate. The food was real, warm, and the best thing she'd tasted in months. She forced herself to go slow, to not make herself sick after days of near starvation. When she'd finished, exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. The bed was soft, too soft. She'd grown used to sleeping on bare ground, to waking at every sound with her heart racing. But her body betrayed her, pulling her down into darkness before she could resist. She dreamed of gold eyes and hands that burned, of a heartbeat that wasn't hers. Lyra woke to shouting, male voices, harsh and angry, echoing from somewhere above. She sat up, disoriented, moonlight still streaming through the window. How long had she slept? Hours? Minutes? The door crashed open. Kalen stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 guards she didn't recognize. His smile was all wrong, sharp and cruel in the torchlight he carried. Well, well, the king's new pet. He stepped inside, and Lyra was on her feet instantly, backing toward the far wall. "Do you know what you are, little wolf? You're a problem, a complication we can't afford." The king ordered. "The king," Kalen interrupted, "is compromised. We all saw it. The way he looked at you, the way he touched you, he moved closer, predatory. Do you know what happens when an alpha of the blood moon line finds his true mate?" Her back hit the wall. He goes feral, permanently. It's a curse that's plagued his bloodline for 7 generations. Every king who's tried to claim their destined mate has lost themselves to the beast. His eyes glittered with something darker than hatred, satisfaction. And you, silent little nothing, are going to destroy the strongest alpha the North has seen in centuries. I'm not his mate. The words felt like a lie even as she said them. I don't even have a wolf. And yet he can't stay away from you. Kaelin reached out, his fingers brushing her arm. The touch felt like acid. Lyra jerked back, and something happened, something she didn't understand. A pulse of energy, sharp and violent, that made Kaelin stumble backward with a curse. His guards immediately drew weapons, silver blades gleaming in the torchlight. "What the hell?" Kaelin started. "Enough." The word was a physical force that drove everyone to their knees except Lyra. She remained standing, pressed against the wall, as Ronan filled the doorway. He wasn't in his formal clothes anymore, just dark pants and a shirt unlaced, his head disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. But the power that radiated from him was suffocating, absolute. His eyes found Kaelin first. "You dare disobey a direct command." "Your Majesty, I was only—" "You were threatening what's mine." The words came out as a growl, and Lyra saw it then, the flash of gold in Ronan's eyes that wasn't quite human. "Get out." Kaelin rose slowly, carefully, his expression schooled into neutrality. But as he passed Ronan, Lyra caught the look he shot her over his shoulder, pure venom. The guards followed, nearly tripping over themselves in their haste to obey. The door closed. Ronan stood with his back to her, one hand braced against the stone wall, his breathing harsh and uneven. In the moonlight, she could see the tension in every line of his body, the way his shoulders rose and fell, like he was fighting for control. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "If what he said is true—" "It's true." He didn't turn around. "Every word. My great-great-grandfather was the first, found his mate, claimed her, and within a month he'd slaughtered half his own court. They had to put him down like a rabid dog." His voice was hollow. "It's happened to every alpha in my line who's tried. The curse is absolute." "Then why did you protect me?" "Because I can't help it." The confession was ragged, torn from somewhere deep. "From the moment you looked at me, I felt you. Here." He pressed his fist against his chest. "Your heartbeat, your fear, your anger. It's like you're inside my head, but not through the echo. Something else, something I can't control." Lyra's throat tightened. "I feel it too. Your heartbeat. I thought I was going crazy." Finally he turned. The devastation on his face stole her breath. "You need to run," he said. "Tomorrow I'll arrange transport, send you somewhere far from here, somewhere you can be safe. I have nowhere to go. My pack is gone. Everyone I knew is dead. Then I'll give you money, a new identity, anything." He took a step toward her, stopped himself. "Because if you stay, I will claim you. And when I do, I'll lose myself. You'll watch me become a monster, and there won't be anything either of us can do to stop it." The distance between them felt like an ocean, like a knife's edge. "What if there's another way?" The words came from that hollow space inside her, the place where her wolf should have been. "What if I'm silent because I'm meant to be? What if that's why I can anchor you? That's not how curses work. How do you know?" She pushed off the wall, took one step toward him. His entire body went rigid. "You said yourself, you've never felt anything like this. Maybe the curse can't break what it can't hear." Hope and terror warred on his face. "You're asking me to bet your life on a maybe. I'm asking you not to send me away." Another step. "I didn't survive losing everything just to spend the rest of my life alone in some corner of the world, wondering what if." Lyra. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer, like a curse. "If I'm wrong, if this destroys me, You'll be alone in a kingdom that will see you as the weapon that killed their king. Kaelin will make sure of it. Then I guess we'd better make sure you're right." The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they weren't saying, with the weight of a destiny neither of them had chosen. Finally, Ronan exhaled, a sound like defeat and surrender wrapped together. "1 week," he said. "I'll give you 1 week to change your mind. After that..." He didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. He turned to leave, and Lyra's voice stopped him at the door. "Ronan." He looked back, and in his eyes she saw the beast he was so afraid of becoming. But she also saw the man, fighting to stay in control, fighting for her. "Thank you," she said, "for not giving up on me before we've even started." His smile was sad and beautiful and completely hopeless. "That's the problem, little wolf. I gave up the moment I saw you. I just didn't know it yet." The door closed. Lyra stood in the moonlight, her hand pressed over her heart, feeling the double rhythm that shouldn't exist. 1 week. 7 days to figure out if she was his salvation or his doom. She had a feeling it wouldn't be nearly enough time. The arena smelled like death and silver dust. Lyra stood at the edge of the fighting pit, chains around her wrists that burned against her skin. Silver, of course, the one metal that could weaken even the strongest shifter, that prevented transformation and dulled healing to human slowness. Around her, the blood moon court filled the stone seats carved into the mountain itself. Hundreds of wolves in human form, their eyes glowing in the torchlight, their hunger for violence palpable in the air. 3 days had passed since Ronan's midnight visit. 3 days where she'd been kept isolated, fed and clothed, but allowed no contact with anyone except Mira, who brought meals in silence and refused to meet her eyes. Then, this morning, guards had come, not to escort her to breakfast, but to drag her here. The challenged must prove their worth. Kaelin's voice carried across the arena from where he stood in the Alpha's box beside Ronan's empty throne. Lyra's jaw clenched. This was a trap, a legal way to kill her without breaking the treaty or defying Ronan's protection order. "I can't shift," she called out, her voice echoing off stone. "You know this. Whatever test you've designed, then you'll fight as a human." Kaelin's smile was all teeth. "Surely the last of the Veil Pack isn't afraid of a fair fight." Nothing about this was fair. The crowd roared their approval, the sound crashing over her like a physical wave. She scanned the seats desperately, looking for Ronan, but the Alpha's box remained empty except for Kaelin and his inner circle. Where was he? A gate on the opposite side of the arena groaned open. Lyra's heart stopped. The wolf that emerged was massive, easily 300 pounds of muscle and fury. Its coat was mottled grey and black, its eyes burning gold as it fixed on her with predatory focus. Around its neck, a silver collar gleamed, preventing it from shifting back to human form, trapping it in its most violent state. This wasn't a test, it was an execution. The crowd went wild, howling and stamping their feet. The wolf began to circle, and Lyra forced for breathing to steady, forced her mind to clear. She'd survived the fall of her pack, survived 3 days of travel with wolves who'd wanted her dead. She would survive this. She had to. The chains fell from her wrists with a metallic clatter. No weapons, no armor, just her and a beast that outweighed her 3 times over. The wolf charged. Lyra dropped and rolled, felt the rush of air as claws passed inches from her head. She came up running, making for the arena wall, where discarded weapons from previous fights lay scattered in the dust. Her fingers closed around a broken spear shaft, the wood splintered, but still sharp. Not much, but better than nothing. The wolf spun with terrifying speed, its lips peeling back from fangs meant to tear through bone. It feinted left, then lunged right, a veteran fighter's move meant to catch her off guard. I'd seen her father use the same trick 100 times. Lyra threw herself backward, using the momentum to drive the spear shaft upward. It caught the wolf in the shoulder, not deep, not fatal, but enough to make it yelp and stumble. First blood. The crowd's howls turned uncertain, shocked. The wolf recovered quickly, circling again, more cautious now. It was testing her, looking for weaknesses. Good, that meant it respected the threat she posed. Lyra kept her weight balanced, spear held low. Her arms already ached, her breath coming hard. She was faster than the wolf expected, more strategic, but she was still human, still breakable, and one solid hit would end this. The wolf lunged again, and this time she wasn't fast enough. Claws raked across her ribs, tearing through the thin shirt they'd given her. Pain exploded white-hot across her side, and she hit the ground hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. The spear shaft flew from her grip. The wolf was on her in seconds, its weight crushing her into the dust, its breath hot and rank against her face. Jaws opened wide, going for her throat. Thunder split the arena. The wolf was ripped away from her with brutal force, sent tumbling across the pit like it weighed nothing. Lyra gasped for air, rolling onto her side, clutching her bleeding ribs. Ronan stood over her, and he was terrifying. His eyes had gone completely gold, no trace of human brown remaining. Power rolled off him in waves that made the air itself vibrate. When he spoke, his voice was layered with the beast, a growl that resonated in her chest. Who authorized this? Silence. The entire arena had gone completely still. Kaelin rose slowly from the Alpha's box. Ancient law, my king. She was brought as tribute. The challenge is tradition. She's under my protection. Each word was carved from ice and fury. That supersedes tradition. With respect, your protection doesn't exempt her from proving her worth to the pack. Kaelin's tone was careful, measured. The court demanded it. I simply facilitated. Ronan's hands curled into fists. Lyra could see it, the way his control was fraying, the beast pushing against the edges of his skin. In the 3 days since she'd seen him, he looked like he'd aged years. Shadows under his eyes, new tension in his jaw. He'd been avoiding her, trying to maintain distance. And now she was bleeding in the dirt because of it. The fight is over, Ronan declared. No, Lyra's voice was rough, strained. She pushed herself up on shaking arms, tasted copper in her mouth. No, he's right. If I don't finish this, they'll always see me as weak, as something you're protecting out of obligation. Ronan's gaze snapped to her, and the devastation in his eyes nearly broke her resolve. You're injured. I've been worse. She got one foot under her, then the other, rising despite the agony in her ribs. Blood soaked through her shirt, warm and sticky. Across the pit, the wolf was climbing to its feet, shaking off Ronan's attack. But I need a weapon, a real one. Lyra, please. She held his stare, willing him to understand. Let me do this. Let me show them I'm not just some broken wolf they can discard. Something shifted in his expression, pride maybe, or recognition of the same stubborn survival instinct that had kept him alive through his own trials. He turned to Kaelin. Give her a blade. That's not. Give her a blade. Not a request, a command that carried the weight of absolute authority. Kaelin's jaw tightened, but he gestured to one of his guards. A moment later, a short sword was tossed into the arena, landing in the dust at Lyra's feet. She picked it up. The weight was unfamiliar. Her father had trained her with knives, with spears, but never swords. Still, sharp metal was sharp metal. Ronan moved to the edge of the pit, and she felt it, that pull, that impossible connection. His heartbeat overlaying her own, faster than it should be, driven by fear for her. End this quickly, he said, low enough that only she could hear. Lyra nodded once, then turned to face the wolf. It watched her with renewed caution, limping slightly from where Ronan's attack had damaged its hindquarters. Good. They were both wounded now, both fighting on borrowed time. Come on, she whispered. Let's finish this. The wolf charged, and this time she didn't dodge. She stepped into the attack, angling her body so the claws scraped across already torn ribs instead of finding new flesh. The pain was blinding, but it brought her the opening she needed. She drove the sword up under the wolf's jaw, where the silver collar met flesh, where the vulnerable pulse point throbbed. Not to kill, she twisted the blade sideways at the last second, but to force submission. The wolf collapsed, whimpering, the fight draining out of it as the blade pressed against its throat. One more inch and it would be over. Lyra held it there, her arms shaking, blood dripping from her chin onto the wolf's muzzle. "Yield," she gasped. "Please, I don't want to kill you." For a long moment, nothing. Then the wolf's eyes flickered, and she saw it, the human consciousness pushing through the violence, recognition and respect in equal measure. It went limp. Submission. Lyra pulled the blade back and stumbled away, her legs finally giving out. She hit her knees in the dust, the sword clattering from her grip. The arena erupted, not in outrage or disappointment, but in approval. Howls rose up from hundreds of throats, a sound that spoke of respect and of pack recognition. She'd done it, proven herself without killing, without becoming the monster they'd expected. Through the haze of pain and adrenaline, she felt Ronan approach, felt his heartbeat spike with panic as he took in the damage, the blood. "Get a healer," he snapped at someone. Then his hands were on her face, tilting her head up. "Lyra, stay with me." "I won," she managed, her lips curving into something like a smile. "You nearly died." "But I didn't, and now they can't say I don't belong." His expression cracked open, showing everything he'd been hiding for 3 days, the fear, the longing, the absolute terror of losing her. "You've always belonged," he said roughly, "from the first moment. That was never the question." "Then what is?" "Whether I'm strong enough to let myself have you." The world tilted sideways. Lyra felt herself falling, but Ronan caught her, lifting her against his chest like she weighed nothing. His heartbeat thundered against her ear, racing in time with her own failing rhythm. "Stay with me," he commanded again, and there was something in his voice that wasn't quite human. "That's an order from your alpha. You don't get to leave me yet." Her alpha? The words should have made her bristle, should have triggered every instinct to resist dominance. Instead, they felt like coming home. "Bossy," she mumbled against his throat. "You have no idea." The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was his voice, raw and broken, whispering against her hair. "Please don't make me lose you, not when I've just found you." Pain dragged her back to consciousness. Not the sharp, immediate agony of the arena, but a deep, pulsing ache that spread through her entire torso. Lyra's eyes fluttered open to unfamiliar surroundings, a room far larger than her cell, with stone walls softened by tapestries and a fire crackling in an ornate hearth. She was in a bed, an actual bed, with sheets that felt like silk against her skin. "You're awake." Ronan's voice came from the shadows near the window. He sat in a chair that looked too small for his frame, elbows braced on his knees, head bowed. Even from across the room, she could see the exhaustion etched into every line of his body. "How long?" Her voice came out rough, scraped raw. 18 hours. He still hadn't looked at her. "Your ribs were shattered. The healer said you lost enough blood that a human wouldn't have survived. Even with wolf healing, it was..." He stopped, his jaw working. "Close." Lyra pushed herself up carefully, testing her limits. The pain was there, but manageable, more of a deep bruise than the tearing agony she remembered. Someone had wrapped her torso in bandages that smelled of herbs, and something metallic, probably a healing salve infused with lunar silver to speed recovery. "Where am I?" "My chambers." Finally, he raised his head, and the look in his eyes stole her breath. Raw, devastated. "The healer needed to monitor you closely. This was the safest place." "Kaelin won't like that." I don't particularly care what Kaelin likes." The words came out sharp, edged with something that sounded like fury barely contained. He orchestrated that trial, manipulated ancient law to put you in that arena, knowing you couldn't shift, knowing you'd likely die. His hands curled into fists. "I should have seen it coming, should have protected you better. You did protect me. You stopped the fight. After you were bleeding in the dirt." He stood abruptly, began pacing like a caged animal. "Do you have any idea what it was like, watching that wolf go for your throat, knowing that if I intervened, I'd be breaking the same laws that keep this kingdom from descending into chaos?" His voice cracked. "Feeling your pain through this cursed connection, knowing you were dying but I didn't die." Lyra swung her legs over the edge of the bed, ignoring the way her vision swam. "I won. And now the pack respects me. That's what you wanted, isn't it? For them to see me as something other than a victim, not at the cost of your life. Life always has a cost." She stood carefully, using the bedpost for support. Ronan moved toward her instinctively, but stopped himself a few feet away, like she was something dangerous he couldn't trust himself to touch. "My pack taught me that. Your protection gave me a chance to pay it on my own terms." Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unspoken. In the firelight, she could see the changes in him more clearly, the shadows under his eyes darker, his skin drawn tight over sharp cheekbones. He looked like a man being eaten alive from the inside. "You haven't been sleeping," she said quietly. "Can't." He turned away, moved to the window. Beyond the glass, dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. "Every time I close my eyes, I feel you, your heartbeat, your dreams. It's getting stronger. The curse." Yes, the word was hollow. I looked through the archives. Every record of the Blood Moon curse. "Do you know what I found?" He glanced back at her, and there was something broken in his expression. "They all started like this. The connection, the inability to stay away. Within weeks, the alphas couldn't distinguish their own thoughts from their mates. Within months, they'd lost themselves completely to the beast." Lyra's chest tightened. "How long do you have?" "I don't know. The records aren't consistent." He turned back to the window, his shoulders rigid. "My great-grandfather lasted 2 months after claiming his mate. My great-great-uncle made it 6 weeks. The one before that," he stopped, shook his head, 3 days. He claims her, and 3 days later he'd massacred everyone in the castle, including her. The horror of it sat between them like a physical presence. "Then don't claim me," Lyra said, even though the words felt like swallowing glass. "Keep your distance. Send me somewhere far enough away that the connection breaks." "I tried that." His laugh was bitter, broken. "For 3 days I stayed away from you, threw myself into court business, into training, anything to keep my mind occupied. Do you know what happened?" He finally turned to face her fully, and she saw it then, the gold bleeding into his irises, the way his pupils had elongated slightly. "It got worse. The more I fought it, the more the beast clawed its way forward. By the 2nd day, I was having blackouts. By the 3rd, I nearly killed one of my own guards for standing too close to your door. That's why you weren't there, at the trial. I couldn't be. If I'd been in that arena, watching you fight, feeling your pain," he moved closer, each step deliberate, "I would have slaughtered everyone there, Kaelin, the court, anyone who'd put you in danger. The beast doesn't understand politics or law. It only understands protect, claim, destroy." Lyra's back hit the bedpost. He stopped a foot away, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, could see the fine tremor running through his arms as he fought for control. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice dropping to something rough and intimate, "about why the curse exists, about why my bloodline was damned in the first place. Tell me." 7 generations ago, the Blood Moon Pack was the strongest in the north, undefeated in battle, untouchable in power. My ancestor, Alpha Darius, was offered a mate by the moon goddess herself. A woman of pure bloodline, perfect in every way. He reached out slowly, his fingers hovering just above her arm, not quite touching. But Darius didn't want perfection. He wanted choice. He rejected the moon goddess's gift and chose a human woman instead. A healer from the borders with no wolf, no pack, no power. Lyra's breath caught. Like you. His fingers finally made contact, the lightest brush against her skin that sent electricity racing up her arm. The goddess was furious. She cursed the blood moon line. Any alpha who found their true mate would be given a choice: accept the bond and lose themselves to the beast, or reject it and die slowly, consumed by the pain of separation. That's why you can't stay away. The curse forces the bond. Yes and no. His hand slid up to cup her elbow, his thumb tracing small circles that made her shiver. The bond was already there. From the moment you walked into that throne room, the curse just accelerates it, makes it impossible to ignore. So we're both trapped. The realization settled over her like ice water. Either you claim me and lose yourself, or you reject me and die anyway. Or, he stepped closer, his free hand rising to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was achingly gentle, completely at odds with the violence she knew he was capable of. Or we find a third option, something the goddess didn't account for. What could she possibly not account for? You. His smile was sad and beautiful and full of desperate hope. A woman born without the echo, without the connection that defines pack, that makes us what we are. Every mate in my bloodline's history could hear the pack mind, could feel the alpha's power through that bond. But you... His forehead lowered until it rested against hers, his breath warm against her lips. You're silent, and maybe that's what breaks the pattern. Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs. You're betting everything on a theory. I'm betting everything on you. His hand slid to the back of her neck, fingers tangling in her hair. You survived your pack's destruction, survived being sold as tribute, survived a trial designed to kill you, and you did it with mercy instead of violence. If anyone can break an ancient curse, it's you. And if you're wrong, then I'll make sure you're far away before the beast takes over completely. I'll make sure you're protected, provided for, safe. His eyes closed, pain flickering across his features. Even if it kills me to let you go. The connection between them pulsed, that strange double heartbeat that had haunted her since the throne room. But this close, she felt something else. The beast lurking beneath Ronan's skin, waiting, hungry, not for violence, but for completion. For her. How do we test it? She asked. The theory? His eyes opened, gold and brown swirling together. We strengthen the bond gradually. See if your silence can anchor me the way I think it can. Small touches, controlled exposure. If I start to slip, we stop immediately. And if you can't stop, then you run and you don't look back. His thumb traced her jawline, feather light. Promise me, if this goes wrong, if I lose myself, promise you'll save yourself, even if it means killing me. The request was so raw, so utterly vulnerable, that it cracked something open in her chest. I promise, she whispered, but I don't think it'll come to that. How can you be so sure? Because when she looked at him, she didn't see a monster waiting to emerge. She saw a man fighting with everything he had to protect the people he loved, even if it meant sacrificing his own happiness. She saw strength and honor, and a loneliness that matched her own. But she didn't say any of that. Instead, she rose on her toes, ignoring the pull in her bandaged ribs, and pressed her lips to his cheek. Chaste, simple, a promise without words. Ronan went absolutely still, his hand tightened in her hair, his breath catching. For a moment, she thought she'd miscalculated, pushed too far. Then he exhaled slowly, deliberately, and the tension drained from his shoulders. "That's one touch," he said roughly. "How do you feel?" "Same as before, maybe a little warmer. And I feel..." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes, wonder flickering across his face. "Calmer. The beast is still there, but it's not clawing to get out. It's..." He shook his head, like he couldn't quite believe it. "Quiet." "See?" Lyra smiled, despite the exhaustion pulling at her. "Maybe broken wolves are good for something after all." "You're not broken." The words were fierce, absolute. "You're exactly what you need to be, what we both need you to be." A knock at the door shattered the moment. Ronan stepped back immediately, putting careful distance between them as he called, "Enter." Mira slipped inside, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. Lyra standing, Ronan near the window, both of them breathing a little too fast. "Forgive the interruption, Your Majesty. The court has requested an audience." Her gaze flickered to Lyra. "They want to formally acknowledge the tributary's victory. It's tradition." Ronan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Tell them I'll be there within the hour." Mira bowed and fled, closing the door softly behind her. Lyra sank back onto the bed, the brief surge of adrenaline fading. "Guess I need to look presentable for court." "You're not going anywhere until the healer clears you. I survived the arena. I can survive standing in a throne room." "Lyra, if I don't show, they'll see it as weakness. You know that." She met his gaze steadily. "Besides, I want them to see what they almost destroyed. Want Kalen to see that his plan failed." Pride and frustration warred on Ronan's face. Finally, he sighed. "You're going to be impossible to protect, aren't you?" "Probably." She grinned, despite the pain. "That you knew that when you decided not to send me away. I'm beginning to realize exactly what I've gotten myself into. Too late to back out now. Wouldn't dream of it." The look he gave her was molten, full of promise and danger in equal measure. "Rest for now. I'll have Mira bring clothes suitable for court. And Lyra," he paused at the door, "what you did in that arena, sparing that wolf when you could have killed him. The pack won't forget that. You showed them mercy is strength, not weakness. That's something this kingdom hasn't seen in a long time." He left before she could respond, the door closing softly behind him. Lyra lay back against the pillows, her hand pressed over her heart where the double pulse beat steady and strong. 1 week, he'd said. 7 days to figure out if she was his salvation or his doom. 3 days down, 4 to go. She had a feeling the hardest tests were still ahead. The dress Mira brought was a weapon disguised as clothing. Deep crimson silk that clung to Lyra's curves, with a neckline that dipped just low enough to be daring without crossing into propriety. The sleeves were long and fitted, covering the bruises on her arms, while the skirt flowed like liquid fire with each step. Someone had thought this through. Elegant enough for court, bold enough to make a statement. She belonged here, and she wasn't apologizing for it. Mira helped her with the bandages, rewrapping her ribs with practiced efficiency. The girl worked in silence, but Lyra caught the small smile tugging at her lips. "What?" Lyra asked. "Nothing." Mira's smile widened. "Just, the king hasn't let anyone enter his chambers in 3 years. Not since..." She stopped herself, shook her head. "Never mind. I shouldn't gossip." "Since what?" Mira's hands stilled. Since his intended mate, the one chosen by the court, betrayed him to the Thornvale pack. She gave them intelligence about our defenses, thinking they'd make her queen when they conquered us. Her voice dropped. He executed her himself when he found out. Haven't seen him look at a woman twice since then. Until now. The unspoken words hung between them. Lyra's stomach tightened. He must have loved her. I don't think so, but he trusted her. And for someone like him, someone with that curse hanging over his head, trust is more dangerous than love. Mira finished with the bandages and stepped back. "You're ready." Lyra studied herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was barely recognizable, no longer the broken survivor who'd knelt in the throne room, but something sharp and dangerous, a wolf in silk. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything." Mira nodded, then hesitated at the door. "He's different with you, lighter somehow, like he can breathe for the first time in years." Her eyes were serious. "Don't break him worse than he already is." She left before Lyra could respond. The walk to the throne room felt endless. Guards flanked her on both sides. Protection or prison escort, she couldn't tell. The castle was massive, all black stone and silver accents, with tapestries depicting battle scenes that looked disturbingly realistic. This was a kingdom built on blood and survival. Lyra's ribs ached with each step, but she kept her spine straight, her chin up. Weakness wasn't an option, not here. The throne room doors opened and conversation died. Every eye turned to her as she entered. The court had assembled in full, hundreds of wolves in human form, dressed in the dark colors that seemed to be favored here. They lined the walls, filled the galleries, all of them watching with varying degrees of curiosity, respect, and hostility. At the far end of the room, Ronan sat on his bone throne, looking every inch the Alpha King. He'd changed into formal attire, black leather and silver chains that emphasized the predator beneath the civilized veneer. His hair was pulled back, revealing the sharp angles of his face, the intensity of his gold-flecked eyes. Their gazes locked across the distance, and Lyra felt it, that pull, that impossible connection that defied explanation. His heartbeat thundered in her ears, perfectly synchronized with her own. She began the long walk down the center aisle. Whispers followed her, a susurrus of speculation and judgment. She caught fragments, survived the trial, the king's protection. What is she to him? But kept her eyes forward, on Ronan, on the man who'd risked everything to keep her alive. Kaelan stood beside the throne, his expression carefully neutral, but she saw the flash of something cold in his eyes as she approached. Hatred, fear, the knowledge that his plan had failed. Good. Lyra stopped at the base of the throne steps and knelt, not out of submission. She'd learned that particular lesson in the arena, but out of respect for the political theater this required. "Rise," commanded, his voice carrying across the chamber. She stood, meeting his eyes. Up close, she could see the strain in his face, the tight control he was maintaining. Being this close to her, in front of the entire court, was costing him. "Lyra Vale," he began, his tone formal, "you were brought to this kingdom as tribute. According to ancient law, you underwent trial by combat and emerged victorious." He paused, and something shifted in his expression. Pride. More than that, you emerged with honor. You proved that strength isn't measured only in claws and fangs, but in mercy and strategy. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. She'd won them over in the arena, she realized. Not all of them, but enough. As Alpha of the Blood Moon Pack and King of the Night Realm, I formally acknowledge your victory and grant you full status as a recognized member of this court. Ronan's eyes never left hers. You are no longer tribute. You are Pack. The words hit her like a physical blow. Pack. Something she'd lost. Something she'd thought she'd never have again. Ronan descended the throne steps slowly, each movement deliberate. When he reached her, he extended his hand. An offer, not a command. Lyra took it. The moment their skin made contact, electricity shot up her arm. She heard his breath catch, saw gold bleed further into his irises. The connection between them flared, that double heartbeat amplifying until she couldn't tell where hers ended and his began. The court watched, silent and hungry for scandal. "I also name you my personal attendant," Ronan continued. "You'll have access to the royal wing, to council meetings, to any resources you require. You answer only to me." Kaelin stepped forward. "Your Majesty, with respect, such a position requires—" "Are you questioning my authority, Kaelin?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Of course not. I merely suggest that the court be consulted on matters of such intimacy." Kaelin's smile was poisonous. "We wouldn't want anyone to think you're showing favoritism based on personal feelings." The accusation hung in the air, thinly veiled. Lyra felt Ronan's hand tighten on hers, felt the beast rising in him, hungry for violence. She stepped forward before he could respond. "General Kaelin raises a fair point. Perhaps a demonstration of my merit would ease the court's concerns." Ronan's eyes snapped to her, warning and worry mingling. "You're still recovering." "I'm strong enough." She turned to face Kaelin fully, releasing Ronan's hand with a squeeze that said, "Trust me." "What did you have in mind, General? Another trial? Or are you brave enough to face me yourself?" Shocked silence. No one challenged the King's General, not openly, not in front of the entire court. Kaelin's expression went cold. "You think surviving one fight makes you my equal? I think you orchestrated that fight, hoping I died, and I'm still standing while your champion submitted." She tilted her head, letting a small smile curve her lips. "But if you'd like to test your theory about merit versus favoritism, I'm happy to oblige." "Lyra," Ronan's voice carried warning, "that's enough." "Is it?" She glanced back at him, and what she saw in his face made her heart stutter. He was terrified for her. "If I'm to be part of this court, I need to prove I earned it. Not through your protection, but through my own strength. You know I'm right." His jaw worked. Finally, he stepped back, giving her room to make her own choices. But the look in his eyes promised consequences later. Kaelin descended from the dais, moving with the controlled grace of a trained fighter. He was bigger than her, more experienced, and unlike the arena, this wouldn't be a fight to the death, just to submission, just a public humiliation if she lost. "No weapons," Kaelin said. "No shifting, just skill." Agreed. They circled each other in the space the court cleared. Lyra was acutely aware of every eye on them, every whispered bet being placed. Most favored Kaelin. He was general for a reason, veteran of 100 battles. But she'd survived things he couldn't imagine. Kaelin struck first, fast and brutal. Lyra barely dodged, felt the wind of his fist passing her cheek. She countered with a strike to his ribs, not hard enough to damage, just enough to show she could land hits. They traded blows, a vicious dance of attack and evasion. Kaelin was strong, but he fought like a wolf, relying on superior strength and speed. Lyra fought like prey that had learnt to bite back, using his momentum against him, targeting weak points with surgical precision. Her ribs ached with each step, but she shoved the pain down, locked it away. Pain was information. She could deal with it later. Kaelin caught her arm, twisted. She let her body go with the momentum, dropped and swept his legs. He went down hard, and she was on him instantly, knee pressed to his chest, hand at his throat. "Yield," she said quietly. His eyes blazed with fury. For a moment, she thought he might actually force her to hurt him. Then he tapped twice against the floor. Submission. Lyra released him and stood, offering her hand. Kaelin stared at it for a long moment before finally accepting, allowing her to help him up. "Well fought," he said, loud enough for the court to hear, but his eyes promised retribution. The court erupted in approval, howls, and stamping feet. She'd done it again, proven herself without mercy, without unnecessary violence. Exactly the image Ronan needed her to project. She turned back to the throne, found Ronan watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. Hunger, pride, possession barely restrained. "Does the court have any further concerns about my appointment?" His voice cut through the noise, sharp as a blade. Silence. "Then this matter is settled." Ronan's gaze never left hers. "Council is dismissed. Lyra, remain." The court filed out, slowly, reluctantly, sensing drama they weren't allowed to witness. Kalen lingered at the door, his expression dark, before finally leaving. When the doors closed, the tension in the room shifted into something else entirely. Ronan descended the throne steps with predatory grace, and Lyra's pulse kicked up. She could see the beast in his eyes now, gold, overwhelming brown, could see the way his hands trembled with the effort of maintaining control. That, he said, softly, dangerously, was incredibly stupid. It worked. You're injured. You could have torn your stitches, collapsed in front of the entire court, but I didn't. She stood her ground as he approached, refusing to retreat. And now no one can say I don't deserve to be here. He stopped inches away, so close she could feel the heat rolling off him, could smell cedar and smoke, and barely leashed violence. You could have been hurt. You would have stopped it before that happened. Would I? The question was raw. How do you know? How can you be so sure I won't lose control and destroy everything? Because I feel you. She pressed her palm to his chest, over his heart. The double pulse thundered beneath her hand. The beast is there, yes, but so are you, and you're stronger than any curse. His hand covered hers, pressing it harder against his chest. You have entirely too much faith in me. Someone has to. For a moment they stood frozen. Then Ronan's free hand rose to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. You're going to be the death of me. Or your salvation. She leaned into his touch, the movement instinctive. We won't know unless we try. Trying means touching you. His voice dropped to a growl. And touching you is the most dangerous thing I've ever done. Then we'll do it carefully, in private, away from prying eyes. She met his gaze steadily. That's why you made me your attendant, isn't it? So we'd have legitimate reasons to be alone together. Among other reasons. Such as? His smile was sharp and wicked and full of dark promise. Such as wanting you close enough to hear your heartbeat, to know if you're safe, to see you first thing every morning and last thing every night. He leaned in, his lips brushing her ear. To gradually, carefully test every limit of this curse until we either break it or it breaks us. Lyra shivered, heat pooling low in her belly. That's quite an agenda. You agreed to it when you took my hand in front of the entire court. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. No going back now, little wolf. You're mine and I'm yours, and we're going to figure out how to survive this together. Promises, promises. I never make promises I can't keep. He released her reluctantly, stepping back to restore some distance. But for now, you need rest. Real rest. Your ribs are fine. The healer did good work. Lyra. Warning. She sighed. Fine. Rest. But tomorrow we start testing your theory properly. Controlled touches, gradual exposure, all of it. Tomorrow, he agreed. For now, let me have Mira escort you back to your chambers. The ones in the royal wing this time. You're not sleeping in that cell anymore. What will the court think? I don't particularly care. His smile was all teeth. Let them think what they want. After today, they know better than to question my choices. He called for Mira, gave quiet instructions. As Lyra turned to leave, his voice stopped her. Lyra. She looked back. What you did today, challenging Kalen, standing up for yourself, that took courage most wolves don't possess. His expression softened fractionally. Thank you for proving you're exactly as strong as I knew you were. Warmth bloomed in her chest, dangerous and addictive. Don't thank me yet. We still have 4 days to figure out if this is genius or suicide. Either way, he said quietly, I'm grateful I found you, even if it destroys me. The words followed her out of the throne room, carved themselves into her heart. 4 days left. The hardest part was just beginning. The assassin came on the 4th night. Lyra woke to the whisper of steel against leather, her body responding before her mind fully caught up. She rolled off the bed as the blade punched through the pillow where her head had been, feathers exploding into the moonlit air. The figure was fast, already repositioning for another strike. Male, dressed in black, no scent. He'd masked it somehow, which meant professional, which meant Kaelin. Lyra grabbed the iron poker from the fireplace as he lunged. She deflected the blade, barely, the impact jarring her injured ribs. Pain bloomed white-hot, but adrenaline shoved it down. He was stronger, faster. She was going to die in this beautiful room, and no one would know until morning. The door exploded inward. Ronan filled the doorway, and he was terrifying. His eyes were pure gold, no trace of human brown remaining. The air around him shimmered with power barely contained, and when he growled, the sound resonated in Lyra's chest like thunder. The assassin made the mistake of turning toward the new threat. Ronan moved with inhuman speed, crossing the room in a blur. He grabbed the assassin by the throat and slammed him against the wall hard enough to crack stone. The man's blade clattered to the floor. "Who sent you?" Ronan's voice was layered, the beast speaking through him. The assassin spat blood, didn't answer. Ronan's hand tightened. "I asked you a question." Lyra saw it then, the way Ronan's fingers were elongating slightly, claws beginning to emerge. The way his breathing had gone ragged, more growl than breath. "Ronan," she kept her voice calm, steady. "Put him down." He didn't seem to hear her. His grip tightened further, and the assassin's face was turning purple. "Ronan," louder this time. "I need you to put him down, now." Still nothing. The gold in his eyes had started to bleed into the whites, and she could see the shift beginning. His jaw elongating, muscles rippling beneath his skin. Lyra dropped the poker and moved to him, ignoring every instinct screaming at her to run from a predator mid-shift. She placed her hand on his arm, felt the corded muscle beneath her palm, the heat that wasn't entirely human. "Hey," soft now, intimate, "look at me." His head snapped toward her, and for a moment she saw nothing but beast, pure predator, pure violence, ready to destroy anything between it and its mate. Then she felt it, that connection, that impossible pulse, her heartbeat overlaying his, anchoring him. "I'm safe," she said quietly. "You got here in time. I'm not hurt." The gold in his eyes flickered, human awareness trying to surface through the feral rage. "But I need you here, with me, not lost in the beast." She stepped closer, her free hand rising to his face. "Come back to me." His breathing hitched. The hand around the assassin's throat loosened fractionally. "That's it." She stroked her thumb along his jaw, felt the tension beginning to drain. "I've got you. You're safe, too." Ronan released the assassin, who crumpled to the floor gasping, but Ronan didn't look at him. His eyes were locked on Lyra, gold slowly receding as brown fought its way back. "You're safe," he rasped, his hands rising to cup her face. His voice broke. "I felt your fear, through the bond, felt you in danger, and You saved me." She covered his hands with hers. Again. "I almost shifted, almost lost control completely." He was shaking now, the aftermath of adrenaline and terror. "If you hadn't been here to pull me back." "But I was, and I always will be." She leaned her forehead against his, that gesture that was becoming familiar, grounding. "See, the theory works. I can anchor you." Guards burst into the room, weapons drawn. They took in the scene, the Alpha King holding the tributary, the assassin groaning on the floor, and immediately secured the prisoner. Kaelin appeared moments later, his expression carefully concerned. "Your Majesty, thank the goddess you're unharmed, and Miss Vale." His eyes found the shredded pillow, the blade on the floor. A tragedy was nearly committed tonight. Yes. Ronan's voice was cold as he turned to face his general, Lyra still tucked against his side. One, I expect you to investigate thoroughly. Find out who hired him, who gave him access to the royal wing, who knew Miss Vale would be in this particular room at this particular time. Of course, Your Majesty. Kaelin's smile didn't reach his eyes. I'll begin immediately. Do that. Ronan's arm tightened around Lyra's waist, possessive and protective. And Kaelin, if I find even a whisper of court involvement in this attempt, I will personally tear apart everyone responsible. Am I clear? Perfectly. The guards dragged the assassin away, Kaelin following. When the door closed, silence fell heavy and suffocating. Lyra became acutely aware of how closely Ronan was holding her, how her body was pressed against his, how thin her nightgown was, how absolutely nothing she was wearing beneath it. Ronan seemed to realize it at the same moment. His eyes dropped, then snapped back up, color rising in his cheeks. You need... He released her abruptly, putting distance between them. I'll have guards posted outside your door, triple watch. No one gets in without my explicit permission. Or you could stay. The words hung between them, dangerous and inevitable. Ronan's jaw worked. That's not a good idea. Why not? You've saved my life twice in 1 week. I feel safer with you here than with a dozen guards outside. She moved toward him, watched him force himself not to retreat. Besides, we need to test the theory, remember? See if prolonged exposure helps you maintain control. Prolonged exposure while you're wearing that, he gestured vaguely at her nightgown, not looking at her, is not testing a theory, it's testing my sanity. Heat bloomed in Lyra's cheeks, but she held her ground. Then I'll change, but please, don't leave me alone tonight, not after... She let the sentence trail off, let him see the fear she'd been hiding beneath bravado. Something cracked in his expression. Get dressed, something less... He cleared his throat. Something warmer. I'll wait outside. He fled before she could argue. Lyra dressed quickly, in thick pants and a tunic Mira had left, her hands shaking as the adrenaline finally faded. Someone had tried to kill her, in the king's castle, in the room he'd personally assigned her. The message was clear, protection or not, she wasn't safe. Which meant Kaelin was getting desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. When she opened the door, Ronan was leaning against the wall, his head tipped back, eyes closed. He'd regained complete control. No gold bled into his irises, no tension that spoke of barely leashed violence, just exhaustion. How did you know, she asked, that I was in danger? I felt it, through the bond. He opened his eyes, met her gaze. Your fear hit me like a physical blow. I was 3 corridors away, and I ran without thinking, just knew I had to get to you. That's intense. It's the curse, the bond strengthening. Every day it gets harder to distinguish your emotions from mine, your heartbeat from mine. By the end of the week, he didn't finish the thought. Lyra stepped back into the room, leaving the door open in invitation. After a moment's hesitation, Ronan followed. He looked profoundly uncomfortable, like he'd never been in a woman's bedroom before, or, at least, not in years. She sat on the edge of the bed. He took the chair by the window, as far from her as the room allowed. This isn't going to work if you're terrified of being near me, she said. I'm not terrified of you. I'm terrified of what I might do to you if I get too close. You didn't lose control earlier. Even when you were mid-shift, ready to tear that assassin apart, you heard me. You came back. Barely. His hands curled into fists. For a moment there, I didn't recognize you. Saw you as prey or rival or... He stopped, shook his head. The beast wanted to claim you right there. Consequences be damned. But you didn't. That's what matters. This time. The words were heavy with meaning. What about next time? What if there's a moment where your voice isn't enough, where the beast is too strong? Then we'll deal with it. She stood, crossed the room slowly. Ronan tracked every movement like a predator watching prey. But I'm not going to spend whatever time we have being afraid of possibilities. I'd rather risk everything than lose this chance. Lose what chance? She stopped in front of him, close enough to see the gold flecks in his eyes even in their dormant state, close enough to feel his breath. The chance to have something real, something that's mine, not handed to me by politics or treaty or fate. The bond is fate. The bond brought us together. What we choose to do about it, that's ours. Ronan stared up at her, conflict playing across his features. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. The contact sent electricity racing up her arm, made her breath catch. "One more touch," he said quietly. "How do you feel?" "Like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. And I feel," he tugged gently, pulling her down until she stood between his knees, his other hand rising to rest on her hip, "calmer than I have any right to be. Like this is exactly where we're supposed to be." Lyra's pulse thundered. This close, she could see every detail of his face, the sharp line of his jaw, the full curve of his mouth, the slight scar above his left eyebrow that spoke of violence survived. He was beautiful in the way dangerous things were beautiful, commanding attention and respect in equal measure. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, his hand sliding up from her hip to the small of her back. "Tell me this is too fast, too much. Give me a reason to walk away." "I don't want you to walk away." "Lyra," her name was a prayer and a curse. "You don't understand what you're asking." "Then show me." For a moment, nothing. Then Ronan stood in one fluid motion, and suddenly Lyra was backed against the wall, his body caging hers, his hands braced on either side of her head. The intensity in his eyes stole her breath. "When I claim you," he said, his voice rough, "it won't be gentle, won't be civilized. The beast will want to mark you, own you, make sure every wolf in this kingdom knows you're mine." His head lowered until his lips brushed her ear. "And I'll want it too. The human and the beast aligned for once, both desperate to make you ours in every way that matters." Heat pooled low in Lyra's belly, desire mixing with fear in a heady combination. "I'm not afraid of you." "You should be." His nose traced the line of her throat, and she felt him inhale deeply, scenting her. "You smell like fear and want, and something wild I can't name. It's driving me insane." "Ronan," she didn't know if it was plea or permission. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "If I kiss you now, there's no going back. The bond will strengthen, the timeline will accelerate. We'll have days, maybe hours, before I either break the curse or it breaks me. Then we'd better make those hours count." Reckless little wolf. But there was affection in his voice, under the warning. "You really don't fear anything, do you?" "I fear losing you before I've had a chance to have you." That broke him. His control shattered like glass, and his mouth crashed down on hers. The kiss was everything he'd promised. Not gentle, not civilized. It was hungry and desperate and claiming, his teeth catching her lower lip, his tongue demanding entry. Lyra opened for him with a gasp, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer even though there was no space left between them. He tasted like cedar and smoke and something wild, something that called to the hollow space inside her where her wolf should have been. The kiss deepened, and she felt it, the bond between them flaring bright and hot, that double heartbeat synchronizing until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. Ronan growled low in his throat, the sound vibrating through her chest. His hands left the wall to grip her hips, lifting her until her legs wrapped around his waist instinctively. He turned, carrying her across the room, and Lyra had a moment of panic thinking he'd take her to the bed. Instead, he set her on the dresser, the solid wood cool beneath her thighs as he stepped between her legs. The new angle was devastating, putting them at eye level, letting her see every flicker of gold that bled into his irises as the beast rose to meet her. "Still with me?" he rasped against her lips. "Always." She pulled him back into another kiss, This one slower, but no less intense. They broke apart only when breathing became necessary, both of them panting. Ronan rested his forehead against hers, his hands trembling where they gripped her waist. That, he said unsteadily, was either the best or worst decision we've ever made. How do you feel? Control-wise? He laughed, the sound rough and disbelieving. I feel incredible, alive. The beast is there, yes, but it's not clawing to get out. He pulled back to look at her properly. Content, like it got what it wanted without needing to destroy everything to claim it. See? Lyra smiled, even though her heart was still racing. I told you, the silence anchors you. You anchor me. He cupped her face with devastating gentleness. And if this curse has taught me anything, it's that some things are worth risking everything for. Even your sanity, especially my sanity. He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise instead of a claim. 3 days left. Let's make them count. Morning came too soon, wrapped in pale gold light that painted the room in shades of hope Lyra didn't quite trust. Ronan had stayed through the night, though he'd moved back to the chair once the adrenaline faded. She'd woken several times to find him watching her, gold flickering in his eyes like dying embers. Each time, their gazes would lock, that impossible connection pulsing between them, and she'd fall back asleep to the rhythm of his heartbeat overlaying her own. Now he stood at the window, shoulders tense, staring out at the mountains. You should have slept, he said quietly. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that blade coming for you, felt your fear through the bond like it was my own. It's getting worse, or better, depending on how you look at it. Lyra sat up, wincing as her ribs protest. You saved my life because of the bond, found me instantly. That's not a curse, that's a gift. A gift that's consuming me. Now he turned, and the exhaustion in his face made her chest tighten. I can't tell where my emotions end and yours begin anymore. When you're happy, I feel lighter. When you're afraid, I'm ready to tear apart the world. I'm losing myself, Lyra, just like they all did. No, she stood, cross to him. You're not. You're still here, still in control. The beast didn't take over last night, even when you were mid-shift. I pulled you back. How many times can you pull me back before there's nothing left to pull? The question was raw. How long before the beast realizes it doesn't need permission anymore? Before she could answer, a knock interrupted them. Mira's voice came through the door. Miss Vale, the King's Council has requested your presence. They've found something regarding your family. Lyra's stomach dropped. She exchanged glances with Ronan, saw her own dread reflected in his expression. I'll be right there, she called. Ronan moved to the door. I'm coming with you. Your Majesty, the Council specifically requested Miss Vale alone. They said there are family secrets that need to be discussed privately before being brought to the King. Ronan's jaw clenched. I don't like this. Neither do I. Lyra touched his arm. But if it's about my mother, about why I was born without the echo, I need to hear it. Maybe it'll help us understand the bond better. Or it's a trap, another attempt by Kaelin to separate us. Then I'll be careful. She squeezed his arm. Besides, we've proven the bond works as a proximity alert. If I'm in danger, you'll feel it. You can be there in seconds. He didn't look convinced, but finally nodded. Take guards, and if anything feels wrong, I'll scream loud enough to wake the dead. His smile was fleeting. I'll hold you to that. The council chamber was smaller than the throne room, but no less intimidating. 7 chairs arranged in a semicircle, each occupied by wolves who'd lived through decades of war and politics. Their eyes tracked her as she entered, assessing, calculating. Kaelin stood at the head of the table, of course. Miss Vale, thank you for coming. His smile was practiced. Please sit. Lyra remained standing. What's this about? An elderly woman with silver streaking through dark hair gestured to the seat across from her. Your mother, Ella Vale. We've been researching her history, trying to... your condition. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Condition. Not gift, not difference, condition. And what did you find? Lyra forced her voice steady. The woman, Elder Marin, based on the silver pin at her throat, opened a worn leather journal. Eleanor Vale was a healer, one of the most gifted in the North, but she was also something else. She looked up, her expression unreadable. She was a curse breaker. The room tilted slightly. What? Curse breaker, a rare talent, almost extinct. Marin's fingers traced the journal's pages. Those who possessed it could manipulate the threads of fate itself, could break or bind magical oaths. It required tremendous sacrifice, usually the loss of something fundamental, voice, sight. In your mother's case, she paused, the echo. She surrendered her connection to the pack mind in exchange for the power to break an ancient curse. Lyra's throat closed. What curse? That's the interesting part. Kaelin leaned forward. The records don't specify, just that she attempted something 23 years ago, right around the time you would have been conceived, and that the attempt failed. Failed how? She died. Marin closed the journal gently. Not immediately, but the magic consumed her from the inside. By the time you were born, she was already fading. She lived just long enough to ensure you survived, then she shook her head. The magic took what was left. The hollow space inside Lyra where her wolf should have been suddenly felt cavernous. A mother had died for magic, had sacrificed everything, the echo, her life, her daughter's birthright, for a curse she'd failed to break. Why are you telling me this? Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Because we believe, Marin hesitated, glanced at Kaelin. Because there's evidence your mother was attempting to break the blood moon curse. The world stopped. That's impossible, Lyra whispered. She couldn't have known about Ronan, about the bond. I was born before. Before he became king, yes. Kaelin's expression was carefully neutral, but not before his father began showing signs of the curse. Alpha Darius, Ronan's father, found his true mate when Ronan was 5 years old. He tried to resist the bond, tried to maintain control. Your mother was brought in as a consultant. He paused. She was with the royal family when Darius finally lost himself to the beast, when he slaughtered his mate and half the court before they could put him down. Horror crawled up Lyra's spine. Ronan watched his father transform into a monster and murder his mother? Yes. Marin's voice was gentle. He was 7 years old. Eleanor Vale was one of the few survivors. She fled the castle that night, pregnant with you, and never returned. We assumed she died in the chaos afterward. We had no idea she'd been attempting to break the curse. If she failed, then... Lyra's hands trembled. Then there's no way to save him. The bond will consume Ronan just like it consumed his father. Not necessarily. Kaelin stood, moved around the table towards her. Your mother's failure doesn't mean the curse is unbreakable. It means she didn't have the right key. He stopped in front of her, his gaze intense. I don't understand. You inherited her gift, the ability to manipulate fate. But unlike her, you were born into silence, born without the echo that would normally anchor a cursebreaker to the pack mind. His hand reached out, hovered near her arm, but didn't touch. You're not broken, Lyra. You're exactly what your mother intended. A weapon specifically designed to break the blood moon curse. The implications crashed over her. She sacrificed her echo so I would be born without one, sacrificed her life so I could save the man you'd eventually bond with, Marin finished quietly. We believe she saw your future, saw you and Ronan bound together, and she gave everything to ensure you'd have the power to break what she couldn't. Lyra's legs gave out. She sank into the chair, her mind reeling. Her entire life, being broken, being different, being sold as tribute, it had all been part of some grand design her mother had set in motion before dying. There's more. Kaylin's voice was gentle now, almost sympathetic. The ritual she attempted, we found her notes. She theorized that the curse could only be broken by someone who embodied both connection and silence. Someone who could touch the alpha's soul without being consumed by the pack mind. Someone who could anchor him through pure emotion rather than telepathic bond. Someone like me. Exactly like you. Marin leaned forward. But the ritual requires a sacrifice, not of life, your mother was wrong about that, but of something equally valuable. The curse breaker must surrender what they want most, must give it up willingly, knowing they can never reclaim it. Dread pooled in Lyra's stomach. What do I want most? The silence that followed was answer enough. Him, she whispered. I'd have to give up Ronan. To save him, yes. Kaylin's expression was unreadable. The ritual would break the curse permanently. He'd be free to rule without fear, to eventually find a mate chosen by politics rather than fate. But the bond between you would be severed completely. You'd feel nothing for each other. Strangers, bound by obligation rather than love. Love, the word hung in the air, dangerous and inevitable. Was that what this was? Had they fallen that far, that fast? And if I refuse, her voice was barely audible, if I don't perform the ritual, then the curse proceeds as it always has. Marin's eyes were stared. Ronan will claim you fully, and within weeks, maybe days, the beast will consume him. He'll lose himself, become the monster he spent his entire life trying to avoid. And you, watch it happen, feeling every moment through the bond, until, she paused, until there's nothing left. Lyra stood abruptly, the chair scraping against stone. I need to think. Of course. Kaylin moved to the door, opened it. But, Miss Vale, the ritual requires specific timing. It must be performed under a blood moon, and the next one rises in 2 nights. 2 nights? The same timeline Ronan had given her originally. The same 7 days, just reframed in terms of cosmic inevitability rather than personal deadline. Does he know? She asked. About any of this? No. Mayrin stood slowly. We thought it best you hear it first, given the emotional complexity of the situation. Emotional complexity. What a sanitized way to describe choosing between the man she was falling for and the man's very survival. Lyra walked out without another word, her mind spinning, her heart splintering. Guards flanked her in the corridor, but she barely noticed them. Barely noticed anything except the thundering double heartbeat in her chest, hers and his, synchronized, inseparable. She found Ronan in the training yard, shirtless and covered in sweat, working through sword forms with a violence that spoke of barely controlled fury. He'd felt her distress through the bond, was working it out on invisible enemies. He looked up as she approached, and the concern in his eyes nearly broke her. What did they tell you? Lyra opened her mouth, closed it. How did you tell someone you could save them, but only by destroying everything between you? My mother, she finally managed. She was trying to break your curse. She died trying. Ronan lowered his sword slowly. What? She was a curse breaker. She witnessed what happened to your father, and she spent the rest of her life trying to find a way to prevent it from happening to you. The words tumbled out, raw and jagged. She made me this way, silent, echoless, so I could finish what she started. Lyra, and I can. She met his eyes, let him see the devastation in hers. I can break the curse, save you from becoming what your father became. But there's a cost. Understanding dawned on his face, followed immediately by refusal. No, you don't even know what it is yet. I don't need to. He closed the distance between them in 3 strides, his hands framing her face. Whatever the cost is, the answer is no. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me. It's not my life." Her hands covered his, holding them against her face like an anchor. "It's us, the bond. The ritual would sever it completely. You'd be free of the curse, but we'd be nothing, strangers." The color drained from his face. For a long moment, he just stared at her, gold and brown warring in his eyes. Then he laughed, the sound bitter and broken. "So the universe's idea of mercy is giving us a choice? I become a monster and destroy us both, or you break the curse and destroy us anyway." He pulled her against his chest, his arms banding around her like he could physically hold them together through force of will alone. Some fucking choice. Lyra buried her face in his shoulder, breathing in cedar and smoke and the scent that had become home. "We have 2 days. The ritual has to be performed under the blood moon. Then we have 2 days to find another way." His grip tightened. "I'm not losing you, not to the curse, not to some ritual, not to fate itself. We'll figure this out. And if we can't..." His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back until she met his eyes. The intensity there stole her breath. "Then I'll take whatever time we have and make damn sure you never forget me. Even if the magic steals our bond, even if you walk away feeling nothing, I'll have filled those days with enough love that some part of you will always remember." His forehead pressed against hers. "And maybe that'll be enough." It wouldn't be. They both knew it. But they had 2 days to pretend otherwise. They spent the next day and a half searching for another way. Ronan pulled every record, consulted every elder, sent messengers to covens in packs across the north. Lyra poured through her mother's journals, recovered from storage where they'd been forgotten for 2 decades, looking for some loophole, some alternative her mother might have missed. They found nothing. The blood moon curse was absolute. 7 generations of alphas had tried to break it. 7 generations had failed. The only option that showed any promise was the ritual, and its cost was unthinkable. Night fell on the 2nd day, and with it came the blood moon. Lyra stood at her window watching it rise, a crimson disk that painted the mountains in shades of violence. Somewhere in the castle, the ritual space was being prepared. Mayron and the elders waited for her decision. She'd made it hours ago. She just hadn't told Ronan yet. The door opened without knocking. She didn't need to turn to know it was him. The bond sang with his presence, that double heartbeat quickening as he approached. "It's time," he said quietly. "I know. I've sent word to Mayron, told her we're refusing the ritual." Now Lyra turned. Ronan stood backlit by firelight, still in his training clothes, exhaustion carved into every line of his body. They'd barely slept, spending every moment together as if proximity alone could solve the impossible. "Ronan, no." He crossed to her, his hands finding her waist with the familiarity born of 2 days spent learning each other's edges. "I've made my choice. I'd rather have whatever time we have, days, hours, than an eternity without you, even if it means becoming the monster." "You don't mean that." "I do." His forehead dropped to rest against hers, that gesture that had become their anchor. "I've spent my whole life afraid of the beast, afraid of losing control, of hurting people, of becoming my father. But you know what I realized?" He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "I'm more afraid of losing you, of waking up and feeling nothing when I look at you, of the bond being severed and forgetting why you mattered." Tears burned behind Lyra's eyes. "If you transform, you'll kill people, innocent people, maybe even me. Then we leave, tonight, before the moon reaches its peak. We'll find somewhere remote, somewhere I can't hurt anyone, and live the rest of our lives waiting for you to snap." She cupped his face, memorizing every detail. "That's not life. That's torture. For both of us. It's better than the alternative. Is it?" She stepped back, breaking contact, and immediately felt the loss like a physical ache. "Ronan, I've spent my whole life being broken, being the wolf who couldn't shift, who couldn't hear, who didn't belong anywhere. And then I met you, and for the first time being broken made sense. My silence anchors you. My difference is what makes the bond work. She wrapped her arms around herself. My mother died giving me the power to save you. How can I not use it? Because I'm not asking you to. His voice cracked. I'm begging you not to. Let me be the one who sacrifices. Let me become the beast if it means you don't have to lose yourself. I wouldn't be losing myself. I'd be losing us. There's a difference. Not to me. He moved toward her again, but she held up a hand, stopping him. If he touched her now, her resolve would crumble. The ritual begins in an hour, she said. I need you to let me do this. And if I refuse, if I physically prevent you from going to that chamber, then you're no better than everyone who's tried to control me, to make decisions for me because they think they know better. Her voice hardened. I'm not asking for permission, Ronan. I'm telling you what I've chosen. The hurt that flashed across his face was devastating. You're choosing to erase us. I'm choosing to save you. There's a difference, not one that matters. He turned away, his shoulders rigid. Fine, perform the ritual, break the curse, become a stranger. But don't expect me to stand there and watch while you rip us apart. Ronan, I'll be in the throne room. When it's done, when the bond is severed and you feel nothing, come find me. Let me see what I've lost. The bitterness in his voice was corrosive. Maybe then I'll finally understand why my father welcomed the beast. At least he got to keep his mate, even if it destroyed them both. He left before she could respond, the door slamming hard enough to rattle the frame. Lyra sank to the floor, her back against the wall, and let herself break, just for a moment, just long enough to feel the full weight of what she was about to do. Then she stood, straightened her dress, and walked toward the ritual chamber with her head held high. If she was going to sacrifice everything, she'd do it with dignity. The ritual chamber was deep beneath the castle, carved from living rock and lit by hundreds of candles that cast dancing shadows across ancient symbols etched into the walls. The blood moon's light filtered through a crystal skylight, painting everything crimson. Marin and 6 other elders formed a circle around a raised dais. In the center, a silver bowl filled with water that reflected the moon like liquid light. Miss Vale, Marin's expression was gentle. Are you certain? Once we begin, there's no stopping. The magic must run its course. Lyra nodded, not trusting her voice. Then please, step into the circle. She moved to the dais, her heart hammering. Through the bond, she felt Ronan's anguish like a knife to the chest, felt him in the throne room, holding himself together through sheer will, felt the moment he realized she was really going through with it. His rage detonated through the bond like a shockwave. The castle shuddered. Somewhere above, wolves howled. Ronan was losing control, the beast rising in response to his emotional devastation. We need to hurry, Marin said urgently. He's not going to wait patiently while we sever his bond. The elders began to chant, their voices rising and falling in a language Lyra didn't understand. The water in the silver bowl began to glow, moonlight given physical form. Place your hands above the water, Marin instructed. Think of what you're sacrificing. Feel it completely. The magic requires absolute certainty. Lyra extended her hands, hovering them over the bowl. Heat rose from the water, or maybe that was just her skin burning with the enormity of what she was about to lose. Ronan, his smile, his touch, the way he looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, the double heartbeat that had become her new normal, the future they'd never have. The water rippled, responding to her emotion. Now speak the words, Marin said. I release what binds us. I sever what connects us. I sacrifice love for freedom. Let the curse be. The doors exploded inward. Ronan stood in the doorway, and he was terrifying. His eyes were pure gold, his body half shifted, caught between human and beast. Power rolled off him in waves that made the candles flicker and the elders stumble back. Don't. The word was barely human, layered with growl. Lyra, don't. Ronan, you have to let me. No. He was across the room in a blur, his hand closing around her wrist, yanking her away from the bowl. The contact sent electricity racing through both of them, the bond flaring so bright it was almost painful. "I won't let you erase us. I don't care what it costs. It'll cost your life." She tried to pull free, but his grip was iron, "and everyone else's when you transform completely. Then that's on me. My choice. My consequence." His free hand cupped her face, thumbs stroking her cheekbone with heartbreaking gentleness, despite the claws beginning to emerge. "Your Majesty, please." Marin stepped forward carefully. "If you disrupt the ritual now, the magic could backlash, could accelerate the curse rather than break it." "I don't care." His forehead pressed against Lyra's, and she felt him shaking, felt the beast clawing at the edges of his control, demanding, desperate. "Let it come. At least I'll have these last moments with her. At least I'll die remembering what it felt like to be loved." The words broke something in Lyra. "You idiot. I'm trying to save you. I don't want to be saved. I want to be yours, even if it destroys us both." Before she could respond, the castle shuddered again, but this time it wasn't from Ronan. Kaelin appeared in the doorway, flanked by a dozen guards, but these weren't Night Realm wolves. Their uniforms bore the sigil of Thornvale Pack, enemy forces. Betrayal tasted like copper and ash. Lyra's mind raced, connecting pieces. The assassination attempt, the convenient discovery of her mother's journals, the ritual with its impossible timing. It had all been a trap. "You planned this," growled, his body going rigid. The curse-breaking ritual was a lie. Not entirely. The curse is real, and the ritual would have worked. Kaelin shrugged. "But I needed you both distracted, needed your attention focused inward rather than on court politics and security. And what better distraction than a doomed love and an impossible choice?" He gestured to his guards. "Take the king. He's half-shifted and emotionally compromised. Should be easy to contain until the transformation completes." "You want me to become the beast?" Realization dawned on Ronan's face. "You want me to lose control so you can justify killing me and taking the throne?" "Oh, I don't want to kill you. I want you to kill everyone else first. Your court, your allies, anyone who might challenge my claim afterward." Kaelin's smile widened. "And then, when you've done all the work for me, I'll put you down like the rabid dog you'll have become. The kingdom will thank me for ending the cursed bloodline. They'll beg me to take the throne." The Thornvale guards advanced. Ronan released Lyra, pushing her behind him as his shift completed. His clothes tore as his body expanded, as the wolf emerged in a rush of power and fury. But even fully shifted, even enormous and terrifying, Lyra could see it, the way he held himself between her and the guards, protecting her even while the beast raged. "Ronan," she said quietly, "I need you to trust me." His massive head swung toward her, gold eyes meeting hers. For a moment, she saw nothing but animal. Then recognition flickered, understanding. He trusted her. Lyra turned back to the ritual bowl, still glowing with moonlight, still waiting for completion. Mayrin stood frozen, torn between protecting her king and finishing what they'd started. "The ritual," Lyra said, "does it require my willing sacrifice, or just sacrifice?" Understanding dawned in Mayrin's eyes. Any willing sacrifice made out of love would break the curse. It doesn't have to be your bond. Lyra turned back to Kaelin, at the man who'd orchestrated everything, who'd betrayed his king, his pack, his honor, and she smiled. "Then I know exactly what to sacrifice." Before anyone could stop her, she plunged her hands into the water and spoke the words. Not about her bond with Ronan, about something else entirely. "I release what binds us. I sever what connects us. I sacrifice love for freedom." The memory of her mother's face, something she'd clung to for 23 years, dissolved like smoke. The sound of her mother's voice singing lullabies. The feeling of safety she'd associated with childhood. Every happy memory, every moment of love before the fall, she sacrificed it all. The magic erupted from the bowl in a column of light that pierced through the skylight, through the blood moon itself. It hit Ronan like a physical force, washing over his shifted form in waves of silver and crimson. He collapsed with a howl that shook the foundations. Kaelin lunged toward the dais, but the Thornvale guards were already scattering, terrified by magic they couldn't understand. Mayron and the elders formed a protective circle, their own power rising to meet the ritual's completion. The light faded. Ronan lay on the stone floor, human again, naked and trembling, alive. Lyra fell to her knees beside him, her hands finding his face. "Ronan, can you hear me?" His eyes opened, brown, completely brown, not a trace of gold remaining. "Lyra, what did you—" He stopped, understanding. "The curse. I can't feel it anymore. The beast. It's gone. I broke it." She helped him sit up, relief making her dizzy. "But not with our bond. I sacrificed my memories, the ones of my mother, of being loved before everything fell apart." Horror crossed his face. "No, Lyra, no, you shouldn't have." "It was my choice." She pressed her finger to his lips, and unlike severing our bond, this was mine to give. The sound of steel being drawn made them both look up. Kaelin stood alone now, his guards having fled, his coup in ruins, but his sword was still drawn, still deadly. "You've ruined everything," he snarled. "He was supposed to transform, was supposed to become the monster." Ronan rose slowly, his body still weak from the curse breaking, but his voice was steady, strong. "The only monster here is you, Kaelin, and you're going to answer for your treason. You think you can stop me? You can barely stand." "He doesn't have to." Lyra stepped forward, and this time she let the hollow space inside her, the place where her wolf had never lived, open completely. Energy poured out, raw and untamed. The Cursebreaker gift her mother had died to give her, finally awakened. Kaelin's sword clattered from his hand as invisible force drove him to his knees. "I am Elena Vale's daughter," Lyra said. "I am the silence that breaks curses, and I am done being underestimated." She didn't need to do anything else. The Night Realm wolves who'd remained loyal burst through the doors, surrounding Kaelin, binding him in silver chains. Justice would be served. Ronan's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing. The bond between them hummed, still intact, stronger than ever without the curse's shadow. "You saved me," he said quietly. "Again. We saved each other." She leaned into him, exhausted and exhilarated. That's what mates do. Outside, the blood moon had passed its peak, fading back to silver. They'd survived. Now they just had to figure out how to live. 3 days after the blood moon, Lyra stood in the throne room and felt nothing. Not fear, not hope, just the hollow echo of memories she'd sacrificed, leaving gaps in her mind where her mother's face should have been. Where warmth and safety had once lived, there was only silence. The court had assembled for Kaelin's trial. He knelt in silver chains at the base of the throne, flanked by guards who'd once served under him. The Thornvale conspirators had been rounded up, the border secured, order restored. But Lyra felt disconnected from it all, watching from a distance she couldn't cross. Ronan sat on his bone throne, every inch the Alpha King. No gold bled into his eyes anymore, no beast lurked beneath his skin. The curse was broken, permanently, and he wore his freedom like armor. He also wore shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights, worry that carved lines around his mouth. He was worried about her. "Kaelin Moran," Ronan's voice, carried across the chamber. "You stand accused of treason, of conspiring with enemy forces, of orchestrating attempts on both my life and that of my mate. How do you plead?" Kaelin's laugh was bitter. Guilty to all of it. But can you honestly say I was wrong? He raised his head, meeting Ronan's gaze. Your bloodline was cursed. 7 generations of alphas lost to madness. I was trying to save this kingdom from the inevitable. By betraying everything we stand for, Ronan's jaw tightened. By letting innocent people die to serve your ambition. By doing what was necessary. Kaelin's eyes shifted to Lyra. Though I admit, I underestimated her. Didn't think she'd find a way to break the curse without destroying herself in the process. He paused. Or did she? The question hung in the air, pointed and cruel. Lyra felt the weight of every eye turning to her, saw the concern on Ronan's face, the way his hands gripped the throne's armrests. He'd tried to talk to her a dozen times since the ritual. She'd deflected every attempt. What was there to say? She'd made her choice. She'd saved him. That should have been enough. So why did she feel so empty? The court demands justice, Mayron spoke, from her position among the elders. What is your judgment, Your Majesty? Ronan's gaze never left Kaelin. For treason against the crown, for conspiring with enemy forces, for attempted murder, death. To be carried out at sunset. His voice softened fractionally. You were my friend once, Kaelin, my brother in all but blood. I trusted you. And that trust made you weak, Kaelin smiled, serene despite the death sentence. But perhaps the girl will succeed where I failed. Perhaps she'll be the thing that finally breaks you. Guards dragged him away before Ronan could respond. The court murmured, a susurrus of judgment and speculation. Lyra stood perfectly still, watching it all like a play she wasn't part of.
Court dismissed, Ronan announced abruptly. Everyone out, now. The chamber emptied quickly, wolves fleeing the alpha's barely controlled temper. Within moments, only Lyra and Ronan remained. He descended the throne steps slowly, his movements careful, like she was something fragile that might shatter at a touch. Talk to me. About what? About whatever's happening in your head. He stopped a few feet away, maintaining distance she simultaneously craved and resented. You've been different since the ritual. Distant, like you're not really here. I'm fine. You're not. He took one step closer. I can still feel you through the bond, feel the emptiness where something vital used to be. You sacrificed your memories, Lyra, the ones of your mother, of being loved. That's not nothing. It was necessary. That doesn't make it not devastating. Another step. You saved me by carving out part of yourself, and now you won't let me help you heal. There's nothing to heal. The memories are gone. I can't get them back. Her voice was flat, emotionless. I knew the price. I paid it. That's the end of the story. No. He closed the remaining distance, his hands finding her shoulders. That's not the end. That's not even the middle. You saved my life, broke an ancient curse, and awakened a power that hasn't been seen in generations. You're not allowed to pretend none of that matters. It doesn't change what I lost. No, but it does mean you don't have to face that loss alone. His hands slid up to cup her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. Let me in, Lyra. Let me help carry this. She wanted to fall into him and let the bond soothe the raw edges of what she'd sacrificed. But every time she tried, she hit a wall of numbness that felt insurmountable. I don't know how, she whispered. I don't know how to feel anything anymore. It's like the ritual took more than just memories. It took whatever made them matter. Horror crossed Ronan's face. The elders said there could be side effects, that sacrificing love could impact your ability to... He stopped, clearly struggling with the implications. Lyra, can you feel the bond? Our connection? She reached for it instinctively, found it there, steady and strong. His heartbeat overlaying hers, his emotions bleeding through. Fear, love, desperation in equal measure. But it felt distant, muted, like hearing music through water.
"It's there," she said carefully, "but it's different, quieter. The ritual damaged it." His voice cracked. "When you sacrificed love, it affected all love, including what's between us." The realization settled over her like ice. She'd broken the curse, saved Ronan from transformation, but in doing so, she'd dulled the very thing that made their bond powerful, made herself capable of anchoring him by becoming hollow enough that nothing could touch her. "I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate. "I didn't know it would." "Don't apologize." His forehead pressed against hers, that gesture that had become their anchor. "You did what you thought was right, what you believed would save us both. He pulled back to meet her eyes. "I just need to know if there's a way back, if this is permanent or if time might heal it." "I don't know." Truth, simple and cutting. "Maren said the effects vary. Some curse breakers recover. Others—" She trailed off, unable to finish. "Others stay broken." He completed the thought she couldn't. "Others sacrifice so much that they can never feel the same way again." They stood in silence, the weight of it crushing. Outside, the sun was setting, Kaelin's execution hour approaching, justice being served, while Lyra and Ronan grappled with a different kind of death. "What do we do?" she finally asked. "If this is permanent, if I can't feel the way I used to, what happens to us?" Ronan's smile was sad and beautiful and full of stubborn determination. "We figure it out. Together." His hands found hers, fingers interlacing. "You might not feel the bond as strongly right now, might not feel love the way you did before the ritual, but I feel enough for both of us, and I'll keep feeling it until you can again, however long that takes. That's not fair to you." "Fair?" He laughed, the sound rough. "Nothing about this has been fair. Not the curse, not the choice you had to make, not the price you paid, but we're still here, still alive, still together, and that's worth fighting for. Even if I never fully recover, even if the bond stays muted forever, even then," he pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her. "Because you're more than what you feel, more than the sacrifice you made. You're Lyra Vale, the woman who survived losing everything, who fought in the arena with mercy instead of violence, who broke a 7-generation curse with creativity and courage." His lips brushed her temple. "And I'm not losing you to this, not when we've come this far." For the first time since the ritual, Lyra felt something crack in the numbness. Not much, just a hairline fracture, but it was there, a tiny spark of warmth where everything had been cold. Maybe hope. Maybe the beginning of healing. Maybe enough. "I don't want to be broken anymore," she whispered against his chest. "Then we'll put you back together." His hand stroked through her hair, gentle and grounding, piece by piece, memory by memory. "I'll tell you stories about your mother from the records, about the woman who loved you enough to die giving you power, about the healer who tried to break a curse because she believed in something better." His voice dropped to something fierce and tender. "And I'll make new memories with you, ones so strong that even if the old ones never come back, you'll have something worth holding on to." Lyra closed her eyes and let herself feel it, the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his arms, the unwavering presence through their bond. It was muted, yes, distant, but it was there. And maybe that was enough to build on. "Ronan, yes, thank you for not giving up on me. Never." The word was absolute. "You're mine and I'm yours. That doesn't change just because the feeling does. We'll find our way back, I promise." "That's not fair to you." "Fair?" He laughed, the sound rough. "Nothing about this has been fair. Not the curse, not the choice you had to make, not the price you paid. But we're still here, still alive, still together, and that's worth fighting for. Even if I never fully recover, even if the bond stays muted forever, even then," he pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her. "Because you're more than what you feel, more than the sacrifice you made. You're Lyra Vale, the woman who survived losing everything, who fought in the arena with mercy instead of violence. And I'm not losing you to this, not when we've come this far. For the first time since the ritual, Lyra felt something crack in the numbness. Not much, just a hairline fracture, but it was there, a tiny spark of warmth where everything had been cold. Maybe hope, maybe the beginning of healing. Maybe enough. I don't want to be broken anymore, she whispered against his chest. Then we'll put you back together. His hand stroked through her hair, gentle and grounding, piece by piece, memory by memory. I'll tell you stories about your mother from the records, about the woman who loved you to die giving you power, about the healer who tried to break a curse because she believed in something better. His voice dropped to something fierce and tender. And I'll make new memories with you, ones so strong that even if the old ones never come back, you'll have something worth holding on to. Lyra closed her eyes and let herself feel it, the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his arms, the unwavering presence through their bond. It was muted, yes, distant, but it was there. And maybe that was enough to build on. Ronan, yes, thank you for not giving up on me. Never. The word was absolute. You're mine, and I'm yours. That doesn't change just because the feeling does. We'll find our way back, I promise.
Maybe, in time, it would be everything. 2 weeks after breaking the curse, Lyra woke to sunlight and the sound of her own heartbeat. Not the double pulse she'd grown accustomed to, just hers, singular, human. Panic clawed up her throat before understanding settled. The bond was still there. She could feel Ronan's presence like a warm current beneath her skin, but it had shifted, quieted. No longer the overwhelming symphony it had been, but something gentler, more sustainable. Maybe this was what normal felt like for bonded mates. Maybe the intensity before had been the curse amplifying everything, and this was what they'd have moving forward. She could live with this. Ronan was already awake, standing at the window of their shared chambers. She'd moved into the royal wing permanently after the trial, watching dawn paint the mountains gold. He wore only sleep pants, his back a canvas of scars that spoke of battles survived, of a life lived fighting. "You're thinking too loud," he said without turning. "How can you tell? The bond's so much quieter now." "Because I know you," he glanced back, a small smile curving his lips. "You get this little crease between your eyebrows when you're overthinking. Been there since you woke up." Lyra touched her forehead self-consciously, found the tension he'd described. "I was just noticing differences. The bond isn't as intense anymore. Is that a bad thing?" She considered. 2 weeks ago, the muted connection had felt like loss, like she'd sacrificed too much and could never get it back. But time had softened the edges, let her see it differently. "No," she said finally, "I think it's healing, finding balance." Ronan crossed to the bed, sat on the edge beside her. His hand found hers automatically, that casual intimacy they'd built over days of existing together. Mayron says curse breakers often go through phases after a sacrifice. Numbness first, then gradual return of feeling. Different than before, but not necessarily worse. Has she said how long it takes? Varies. Could be weeks, could be months. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Could be that some things never come back exactly as they were, and we learn to love what we have instead. There was no pressure in his voice, no expectation, just acceptance of whatever came next. "You're being very patient with me," Lyra said quietly. "You broke a 7-generation curse and saved my life. I think I can manage patience while you heal." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "Besides, I like this version of you too. The one who's learning to feel again, who's building new foundations instead of trying to recreate what was lost. Even if I'm different, especially because you're different." His eyes met hers, warm and steady.
You sacrificed something precious to save me. That changes a person, but it doesn't make you less, just new, and I'm honored to know both versions. The woman who walked into my throne room broken and defiant, and the woman who sits here now, still fighting to become whole again. Emotions swelled in Lyra's chest, not the overwhelming surge she'd felt before the ritual, but something quieter, deeper, more certain. "I love you," she said, testing the words, meaning them, smaller somehow, but more real. Ronan's expression softened into something that stole her breath. "I love you too, every version of you, past, present, and whoever you become." He kissed her then, slow and thorough, and Lyra let herself feel it. The warmth of his mouth, the solid strength of his body, the bond humming contentedly between them. Not desperate or consuming like before, just right. When they broke apart, Ronan's forehead rested against hers. "The court wants to make an announcement today, about us, about the curse being broken and what it means for the kingdom." Lyra's stomach tightened. "What kind of announcement?" "The kind where I officially claim you as my mate and queen." He pulled back to gauge her reaction. "I know it's fast, know you're still healing, but the kingdom needs stability, needs to know their alpha has found his match, and the curse won't plague future generations." Queen. The word felt too big for her mouth. "Ronan, I was tribute. I've been pack for less than a month. The court will never... The court will accept it because I'm not giving them a choice." His voice carried that alpha authority she'd first heard in the throne room. "You earned your place, proved yourself in the arena, broke an ancient curse, survived assassination attempts and political manipulation. Anyone who questions your right to stand beside me can answer to me personally." That's not exactly democratic. I'm not a democracy. I'm an alpha king, and I choose you. He cupped her face, his touch gentle despite the steel in his words. "But only if you choose me too. Only if you want this, the crown, the court, the responsibility of being queen to wolves who once saw you as nothing." Did she want it? The girl who'd knelt in this castle as tribute would have laughed at the impossibility. But that girl was gone, sacrificed along with her mother's memories. The woman who remained was different, stronger, scarred but not broken. "Yes," Lyra said, "I choose you. Choose this. Choose becoming someone who can stand beside an alpha king and not flinch." Ronan's smile was brilliant. "Then we should probably get you dressed appropriately. Can't have my queen accepting her crown in sleep clothes." "I'm accepting a crown today? Did I forget to mention that part?" His grin turned wicked. "My apologies. Yes, full coronation ceremony. The court's already assembling." "Ronan!" She shoved him, laughing despite the sudden nerves. "You could have led with that information. Where's the fun in that?" He stood, pulling her up with him. "Besides, I've seen you face down assassins and political coups. I think you can handle a ceremony." Mira arrived moments later with a dress that made Lyra's breath catch. Deep crimson silk, the color of the blood moon that had witnessed her sacrifice. Silver embroidery traced patterns across the bodice, wolves and crescents intertwined. It was a statement piece, a declaration. She was no longer hiding, no longer diminished. The ceremony was held at the throne room at noon, with the entire court in attendance. Lyra walked down the center aisle alone, no guards, no escort. Her head held high, despite the whispers that followed her progress. Let them whisper, let them judge. She'd earned this through blood and sacrifice, and stubborn survival. Ronan waited at the throne, dressed in formal black with silver chains that marked his rank. But when his eyes found hers, all the formality melted into something warm and intimate. Pride, love, certainty. She climbed the dais steps and knelt, not in submission, but in respect for tradition. Lyra Vale, Ronan's voice carried across the chamber. "You came to this kingdom as tribute, knelt in this very room as the last of a fallen pack. But you rose through trial and courage to become something more. You broke a curse that plagued my bloodline for 7 generations, awakened a power thought lost, proved that strength comes in many forms, and mercy is not weakness. He lifted a crown from the cushion Marin held, delicate silver worked to look like intertwined thorns and moonlight. I name you my mate, my equal, my queen. Will you accept this crown and all it represents? The responsibility to lead, to protect, to stand as beacon for those who've lost their way? Lyra met his eyes, saw the question beneath the formal words. Are you ready? Are you sure? She was. I accept, she said clearly, the crown, the responsibility, and the honor of standing beside you. Ronan placed the crown on her head, his hands lingering for just a moment. Then he pulled her to her feet, and together they turned to face the court. Your queen, Ronan announced. Any who challenge her right to this crown challenges me. Any who threaten her answers to the full force of the Blood Moon Pack. And any who doubt her strength, his smile turned sharp, I invite to test it personally. Silence. Then, slowly, the court began to howl. Not in protest or mockery, but in approval. In acknowledgement of pack hierarchy and the power dynamics that had shifted irrevocably. Lyra was no longer tribute, no longer the broken wolf who couldn't shift. She was queen, mate to the Alpha King, cursebreaker, survivor. And as she stood there in crimson and silver, feeling the weight of the crown and Ronan's hand in hers, she finally understood what her mother had seen all those years ago. Not just a way to break a curse, but a destiny worth dying to ensure. The ceremony concluded with a feast that lasted into evening. Lyra played her part, gracious and regal, accepting congratulations from wolves who'd once wanted her dead. But when night finally fell and she could escape to the royal chambers, exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. Ronan found her on the balcony, still wearing the crown, staring out at the kingdom that was now partially hers to protect. Overwhelming? He asked, joining her. Terrifying, exhilarating, surreal. She laughed softly. All of the above. You were perfect, every inch a queen. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. Though I could tell you were exhausted around hour 3 of the feast. How? Little crease between your eyebrows. Also, you stopped smiling with your eyes. He pressed a kiss to her temple. I know you, remember? All your tells. Lyra leaned back into him, letting his strength support her. Through the bond, quieter now but still present, she felt his contentment, his absolute certainty that this was right. Thank you, she said, for seeing me when I was nothing, for protecting me when I had no power, for loving me even when I couldn't fully feel it back. You were never nothing, his arms tightened. You were everything from that first moment in the throne room. It just took time for both of us to realize it. They stood in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge over the mountains. In the distance, wolves howled, the nightly song of packs marking territory and celebrating survival. Lyra added her voice to theirs. Not a shift, she still couldn't transform, might never be able to, but a howl nonetheless, raw and defiant and full of triumph. She'd knelt before wolves as tribute. Now wolves knelt before her as queen. And the woman who'd orchestrated it all, her mother, who'd sacrificed everything to give her daughter this chance, would never see it. Those memories were gone, fed to ritual magic to break an ancient curse. But Lyra carried the legacy anyway, in her power, her crown, her stubborn refusal to be broken by circumstance. Do you think she'd be proud? The question slipped out before she could stop it. My mother, if she could see this. Ronan turned her in his arms, his hands framing her face. I think she knew, saw it somehow, even 23 years ago, saw you standing here as queen, having saved the man you loved by becoming exactly what she designed you to be. His smile was gentle, and I think she'd be incredibly proud. not just of what you accomplished, but of who you became along the way. Tears burned behind Lyra's eyes, the first she'd shed since the ritual, not from sadness, but from something else, something that felt like the memories she'd lost trying to reach her through the gaps. Love, recognition, peace. "I wish I could remember her face," she whispered. "We'll find it. In records, in paintings, somewhere." Ronan's thumbs wiped away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "And I'll tell you every story I can find about Eleanor Vale, the healer who defied a goddess and gave her daughter the power to change everything. Promise?" "I swear it. By the moon, by the bond, by everything we've survived to get here." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. "You're not alone in this. Not in the grief, not in the healing, not in building whatever comes next. We do it together. Together." The word wrapped around her like safety. Lyra pulled him closer, the crown slipping slightly, as she buried her face in his neck. He smelled like cedar and smoke and home, felt like the future she'd never dared imagine. "I love you," she said again, testing the words, letting them mean something new, something built on sacrifice and survival rather than fate and destiny. "I love you too." His voice was rough with emotion. "My queen, my mate, my impossible little wolf who saved me from myself." They stood on the balcony until the moon reached its peak, silver and perfect. No blood stained it tonight. No curse hung over them. Just two people who'd chosen each other despite everything the universe had thrown in their path. Inside, the crown waited to be stored. The court expected appearances. The kingdom needed guidance. But for now, for this moment, they were just Ronan and Lyra, alpha and mate, two broken pieces that had somehow found a way to fit together and become stronger for it. Tomorrow would bring challenges, questions about her power, about the curse breaking, about what it meant for future generations. But tomorrow was hours away. Tonight they had won, and that was enough. 6 months later, Lyra returned to the ruins of Vale territory. The journey had taken 3 days, accompanied by Ronan and a small guard detail. The land that had once been her home was overgrown now, nature reclaiming what war had destroyed. Burned buildings stood like broken teeth against the sky, monuments to violence and loss. But they weren't alone. A group waited at what had once been the pack's meeting hall, survivors who'd scattered after the fall, wolves who'd sold her as tribute to save their own skins, and at the centre, Alpha Torven, the man who'd negotiated her sale, who'd looked at a grief-stricken girl and seen only currency. He was smaller than she remembered, weaker. Time had not been kind. Lyra dismounted, her boots crunching on ash and memory. She wore travelling clothes, simple leather and linen, but the silver crown rested on her head, impossible to miss. And Ronan stood at her shoulder, silent support and barely leashed threat.
Torvin's eyes widened as recognition hit. "Lyra? Lyra Vale?" He stumbled forward, then dropped to his knees. The others followed, a wave of submission that tasted like victory and ash. "Your Majesty, we heard rumors, but we didn't believe that the girl you sold would become queen." Lyra's voice was steady, empty of anger or pain. 6 months ago, this confrontation would have destroyed her. Now it just felt necessary. That the broken wolf you discarded would break a curse and claim a crown? "We had no choice," Torvin's voice cracked. "The treaty demanded tribute. You were the only one without family to protest, without value." She stepped closer, looked down at the man who'd sealed her fate. "You told me I was worthless, defective, that selling me was a mercy because at least I'd die serving a purpose." Shame colored his face. "Good. I came here to tell you something," Lyra continued. "Not because I need your acknowledgement or your apology, but because you need to understand what you threw away." She knelt, bringing herself to eye level with the man who'd discarded her. "I am Lyra Vale, Queen of the Night Realm, mate to Alpha King Ronan Vex, Cursebreaker,
The woman who survived everything you said would destroy her. She stood, power radiating from her in waves that made the kneeling wolves whimper. Not aggressive, just present, undeniable. You taught me that being broken doesn't mean being worthless, that silence can be strength, that surviving is its own form of victory. Her hand found Ronan's, fingers interlacing. So thank you, Alpha Torvin, for selling me to the one place where being different made me powerful, for throwing me away so I could find where I actually belonged. She turned to leave, Ronan moving with her. Behind them, Torvin called out, "Your Majesty, please, we're struggling. Without pack support, without territory rights." Lyra glanced back over her shoulder. "Then I suggest you learn what I did, that strength comes in many forms, that mercy is not weakness, and that the wolves you discard today might be the ones you need tomorrow." She paused. "The Night Realm offers sanctuary to those who prove themselves. If you can do that, if you can become worthy of the second chance you never gave me, our borders are open." She didn't wait for a response, didn't need to see how her words landed. She'd said what she came to say, proven what she needed to prove. The rest was their burden to carry. As they rode away from the ruins, Ronan squeezed her hand. "How do you feel?" Lyra considered. 6 months ago, she would have felt triumph, vindication, the sweet pleasure of revenge. Now she just felt free. "Complete," she said finally, "like I closed a chapter that needed closing. No regrets about showing mercy instead of justice. Justice would have been easy. Mercy is harder, but it's also what makes us different from them." She glanced at him, smiled. "Besides, I learned from the best. A king who protected a tributary when he should have discarded her, who chose love over fear, hope over certainty." Ronan's expression softened. "You give me too much credit. I give you exactly what you've earned." They rode in comfortable silence, the ruins disappearing behind them. Ahead, the mountains of the Night Realm rose against the sky. Home, safety, future. Lyra's hand drifted to her chest, feeling the steady pulse beneath her ribs. Singular now, her own rhythm fully restored. The bond with Ronan had settled into something sustainable, beautiful in its constancy rather than its intensity. She'd sacrificed her mother's memories to break a curse, lost the feeling of being loved before the world shattered. But she'd gained a kingdom, a mate, a power that could reshape fate itself, and the knowledge that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are only the universe preparing us for who we must become. She'd knelt before wolves as nothing. Now, wolves knelt before her as everything. The girl who'd been sold had become the woman who couldn't be bought. And that was a story worth telling. And so, their destiny was sealed, a union forged through fire and sacrifice. The Cursebreaker and the Cursed King, bound not by fate alone, but by choice, the most powerful magic of all. Their story now belongs to eternity, but its power only grows if shared. If this journey marked your soul, leave a like as a seal of pact. Subscribe to ensure more legends like this reach you. Most importantly, spread this tale, create hype, for the best stories are those that refuse to die in silence.